If you think burdening future generations with trillions of dollars in debt is sound economic policy, you might be a statist. If you think 10% unemployment is a sign of economic recovery, you might be a statist. If you find yourself demonizing profit and talking about the evils of corporations on your BlackBerry while you're in a Starbucks, you might be a statist. If you find yourself in your electric car driving to a protest to block the construction of a new power plant, you might be a statist. If you talk about cutting deficits after quadrupling them, you might be a statist. If you raise taxes, forcing a person to take his business out of your state, and then are sorry that you didn't raise those taxes sooner, you might be a statist. If you think the tax code is too simple and that the tax rate is too low, you might be a statist. If you think every light bulb in the nation should be replaced with a mercury-filled curly cube to save the environment, you might be a statist. You also may have been exposed to some of that mercury as a child. If you believe the carbon dioxide that you are exhaling every time you breathe is pollution, you might be a statist. If your first major initiative upon taking office as governor is to raise the state's income tax in a recession, you might be a statist. If you made tens of millions of dollars peddling subprime loans while presiding over an accounting scandal at a government-sponsored enterprise, you might be a statist. If you think Carrie Prejean's answer was a crime against humanity, you might be a statist. If you think destroying the health care of 280 million Americans to fix it for 15 million is a good idea, you might be a statist. If you voted to continue to allow federal funding to Acorn even after the O'Keefe and Giles videos surfaced, you might be a statist. If someone tells you they hope the Obama agenda fails, and your first reaction is that they want the country to fail, you might be a statist. If you think cutting back on the missile defense shield while North Korea and Iran are developing nuclear weapons is sound military policy, you might be a statist. If you want to prosecute CIA personnel for keeping this country safe for the past 8 years, you might be a statist. If you find yourself having trouble saying the words victory and war on terrorism, you might be a statist. If Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro are worried about being to your right, you might be a statist. If you can spend 20 years in Jeremiah Wright's church and not realize that he was full of hate, you might be a statist. If you can spend 15 years working around Bill Ayers and not realize that he was once a terrorist, you might be a statist. If you ever exchanged money with Tony Rezko, you might be a statist. If Sarah Palin gives you nightmares, you might be a statist.